Hi, this is Lee. I got a question from a viewer who wants to know how to do something particular with a drawing that might have only partial outlines. So if you take Woodstock here, you can see that part of him is outlined, but part of a distinctive feature of Woodstock is that these little head feathers are not outlined. And if you were to go and add an outline to those, it doesn't quite look right. So how can you do something like that? Say you want to have your normal black shadow layer, but you also want to have no black outline around Woodstock's head feathers. So I was going to show how to do that. So normally what you do if you want to fill in gaps in an outline is you just take the Bezier tool and you draw them. And it's the same here. We're just going to draw them, but they're going to be temporary. So I'm just drawing those, and then I'm going to switch to the node tool and curve them a little bit like they are in the example. And then I'll go in and do these as well. And I'm going quickly, so of course just take whatever time you need to make sure they look the way you want them to. Okay, so then I'm just going to curve these. All right, and I did that in purple on purpose so that I could see. But for filling it in, we're now going to use those as an outline to fill in Woodstock. But I'm going to turn them to black because that'll give me better contrast for the paint bucket. So I'm just going to click and drag to select those, hold down the shift key and click on the black in the palette down here, and that changes those to black. And actually they're a little bit transparent, so I'm just going to pull the opacity up to 100. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to use my paint bucket to fill in Woodstock. And I'm going to have it set at 0 pixels grow. The threshold's about 40. Okay, so there's Woodstock. All right, now if I was to go, this video is going to have a lot of back and forth because there's different ways you can do this. So I'm going to be doing stuff and then undoing it. So now I'm going to click and drag to select those strokes, and I'm just going to delete them. Now Woodstock is filled and he doesn't have any black outline around his head feathers, but his shadow's not going to be filled in. And if you were to take this whole thing and try to break it apart and union it, Woodstock's not going to fill because he's not a solid outline. So let me get him back. Now we're back to the same place we were. One thing you could do is you could duplicate this layer, Control D, and then click Shift and hold to select both the black outline and the fill and union those. All right. Now we have a black outline, but we got a little problem. He has all these gaps inside because that fill was not exactly out to the edges. So how do you take care of that? Let's see if I'm back where I was. Okay, now we're back where we were. One thing you could do is you could outset this a little bit. So if I go to Edit, Preferences, click the plus on Behavior and go down to Steps, I want to set my inset outset to a very small number, and it is. So then I can do Control close parentheses to grow that a little bit. Okay, now it's a little bigger. Now I can duplicate that and combine it with the outline, and then we'll go in and look and see. And he is better filled in at this point, right? If I double click, you can see there's no gaps in the shadow layer. But now one problem with that now is that our our fill of Woodstock is a little thicker than it was. And to me that looks okay. Your outline's going to be a little thinner than it was for Snoopy. So I'll show you one way. In this case I think it looks okay, but in some cases it might not. So let me show you one more trick for getting that to getting the outline to not be too thin with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Bezier tool and I'm just going to separate these two portions of the drawing so that I can fill in the outline. So I'm just drawing a line there. I'm going to hold down Shift and click to change that to a white line, and then I'm going to go to the fill and stroke panel and change its thickness to something thicker like 6 and make sure the opacity is up to 100. Okay, so now we've got a line that divides those, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to fill this outline with the paint bucket, but I want it to be really precise. And with the paint bucket, the further zoomed in you are, the more precise it is. Okay, so now I'm going to take the paint bucket and I'm going to fill this outline, and I'm going to change it to green so I can tell what I'm doing. Now, one thing that's cool with the paint bucket, if you hold down the shift key while you fill things, it combines those together as an object. So I'm holding down the shift key and clicking on all of these black parts. Now you'll see all of that is one object. That's pretty convenient. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Woodstock and I'm going to duplicate his fill, Control D. Now I'm going to expand that so that it covers quite a large area, and I'm going to, no, that's not what I'm going to do. Hold on, let me start over. I'm going to take Woodstock, I'm not going to duplicate it, I'm going to expand it. Now I will duplicate it and join that to the black background. Okay, now you see if I move my filled in outline, you can see that it's filled in nicely, but it has kind of like an overlap in these areas, which doesn't look very clean. If I pull that off, you can see that the black background is perfect on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this green outline and subtract it from the yellow. So select both, Control Shift minus to subtract. Okay, now you can see that it's a nice clean fill. If I move that out of the way, the black background is perfectly matched up with Woodstock's head. So that's a few different ways you can do that with some of the problems that you might encounter. And now here, this line, forget, I can just delete that. I don't need it. And that's one cool thing about the paint bucket is it goes by basically what is shown on the screen rather than what is joined together as an object. So if I just put, I could even just put like a rectangle over this part here and change it to white, and now the paint bucket is going to see that as a different color and not fill it. So that can be very convenient, a convenient tool when designing your SVG files. So that was quick, but hopefully if you go through it, you can see what I did there and why, and let me know if you need me to explain anything else. Thanks.